son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, folks, it is once again the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you could be so kind as to like and subscribe, that really helps out the channel, and I really appreciate it. Today, we're joined by third-time guest, a legend in alternative medicine history, the curator of the World Research Foundation, and good friend, Stephen Ross. Welcome back to the show.
Hi there, James. Thank you. And thank you for that rousing applause.
That was the studio audience. That was all them. So, you know, I've been super fortunate to be able to kind of brainstorm with you on the wealth of knowledge that you've come across in your time and that you have at your library there. And one of the things that has always kind of piqued my interest was the Spectrochrome, and we had talked about doing an episode. So we're going to try and commit this episode to light and light therapy, and you just so happen to be yet again a what's the word I'm looking for? You're the steward. You're the steward of a lot of this information, and of course, as you can see in the background, some of the remaining physical pieces of this technology. So I just want to kind of kick it over to you and kind of explain the basic ideas of light therapy, and then of course we can get into the Spectrochrome and the other things we have planned.
Again, thank you very much. I never take these interviews for granted, James, so I appreciate you allowing me to share. I want to cover both the Spectrochrome, which is the use of the visible light spectrum, and then follow up with something called a multiple wave oscillator, which worked with electromagnetic frequencies around radio waves, and then a general discussion about the electromagnetic spectrum, how it is more conducive to healing the body than the majority of pharmaceuticals that are around. So let's dig in and look at color therapy. Now, Pythagoras, 550 BC, actually spoke about color therapy that long ago, and it was really old even before he started talking about it. So color is not a new topic. We're again speaking about the visible light spectrum. And as I got involved in color and realized how effective it might be, I came across an individual named Dinshaw Gadiali, who started and initiated a therapy called Spectrochrome, which was a perfect 12-color system. And by that, I'm saying he called it a perfectly attuned color system. Dinshaw was from India, and he was really a genius. If you look at his early history, he was far advanced in his wisdom, just not only general knowledge, but he was also a yogi on top of that. And he became interested in color because he read a book written by Babbitt back in the 1800s. We actually have Babbitt's book and Dinshaw's at my site, Less Complicated, but Babbitt had a 6-color system. Dinshaw improved it to a 12-color system. Now, I want to make sure as you and I interact, I'm not making this some lecture that goes on and on. So I'm going to break periodically so it's not so monotonous. But Dinshaw is not the only system. And you and I were talking, James, and you mentioned that color is becoming more predominant in people's discussions. And when people come to me and say, "Oh, Steve, have you heard about this color or this color therapy, or what do you think?" I think color is very, very good, especially if you think of Billy Rubin, infant liver syndrome. When I give lectures to medical people and they're a little skeptical, I'll say, "Hey, what do you do for premature babies with yellow jaundice? Well, and then they always stop because they don't want to say what I finished. You put them under a blue light, and those that are under the blue light live, and generally the ones that are not pass away. So you may not want to call that, Mr. Doctor, color therapy, but it is color therapy.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Well,
So,
and I know,
yeah.
I just as kind of a tangential thing, like red light therapy in the past 20 years has become a much more prominent thing. There's people who are just, again, that's an average part of their health regimen. And 25 years ago, maybe people weren't seriously entertaining that, but now that's a well accepted thing. Like that there are benefits to bathing yourself in infrared light.
Yes. And this is interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because just like in the medical profession, they have specialized it. So you have the heart doctor and the kidney doctor. This is almost what's happened in the color area, which is why the Spectrochrome in Dinshaw is different. The red light therapy or any therapy using one dimension is not going to necessarily address the entire body. This is why I like the Spectrochrome system, because the 12 colors will address virtually every sort of disease, illness, and physical difficulty or challenge that the body faces. So it's more of a complete system, but color is going to be effective. And generally, when people come up with some new discovery, they have used that color for one particular situation. Maybe makes you more relaxed, or it will address a specific challenge. But I like something that's addressing the whole body at one time. And that's why as we dig into Spectrochrome and I explain it, I want people to understand it is so far reaching that even a book that is put out that is called Let There Be Light lists more than 350 diseases and illnesses that this system will address. So when I say that it is more encompassing, that is really what I'm referring to.
Well, and I think it's important to note too, and this is something that I was told my entire life, you need sunlight. You got to get out in the sun. It's good for you to get in sunlight. And it didn't dawn on me until much later in life. It's because my body actually needs the light from the sun. So even when we start talking about these things, some people might be like, well, how could blue light or violet light or any of these lights affect me? That we get full spectrum light from the sun, and we need it. Our bodies need it for all the chemical processes that go on in our body. So hyper focusing that to one spectrum, one band of the spectrum of light, theoretically would have, benefits for certain types of things. I don't know. To me, it's never, as soon as I reached that conclusion, it became very easy for me to accept we're like plants in that way. We're photosynthesizing the light, and we need the full spectrum of that light. And there's definitely some stuff I want to get into once we get into the more conversational portion of this conversation about like LED lights and the amount of LED information that we're bombarded with. But let's definitely hit the spectrogram. I'm super excited to hear about this.
Yes. So Dinshaw, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, comes to America, and his system, he comes up with his color machine here. Now, this is very interesting because you can generate all 12 colors of the system using this different combination of glass here. And it's phenomenal. And 500 US doctors became interested and were using this, not only this machine, but this entire system. Now, probably the premier case, and you do have the slides, is little Grace Sherlow, 7 years old, comes to Kate Baldwin in Philadelphia Women's Hospital with this machine that you see, and this little girl had second-degree burns over 2/3 of her body. I mean, this picture is coming from an article in the Atlantic Medical Journal from 1926. So let's go to the next slide. One more slide. And here she is. Interesting, she hadn't voided fluids for 24 hours by the time she came to Dr. Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin used a specific color on her, and she immediately voided the fluids that she was retaining. Now, the next slide is going to be very dramatic because that was the same back we saw in the very first slide. Now, there was never any skin grafts or topical application. Now, James, I don't know how easy it is for you to flip back again, but I want your viewers to, to see her first one. Yes, this, and then go back. See, I got James doing all the heavy lifting. This is the same girl, 7 years old, Grace Sherlow, and it was reported after the first hour that she had no more pain. Now,
wow.
Anybody who's involved with burn victims will think this is absolutely impossible, ridiculous, a hoax. It cannot be, because no skin grafts, no topical applications, no pain. But again, this was reported in the medical journal. And after this, Philadelphia Women's Hospital added 6 more color devices to their clinic, because I'm going to use this very simple word. Seeing is believing. And if you have a case like this was not positive thinking. This was not, we think she got better. This is the little girl who was in that first picture who walked out of the hospital. Now, this machine that I have, and I don't know if you can cue up the picture with them destroying the machines. Yes,
right here.
Okay. So, what you have here is Dinshaw was eventually brought into court for practicing color. And at his first trial, the jury saw all this testimony of not only that little girl who appeared in court, but many other cases from doctors where the problem was rectified. Now, the jury released Dinshaw. However, the government came back with practicing medicine without a license, and Dinshaw was thrown in jail. And as you can see by this picture, marshals went out and destroyed, I'm going to say virtually all the machines, because if I said all, this wouldn't exist.
Right, yeah.
This is one they didn't get. This is an original Dinshaw machine. It had a 1,000 watt bulb in it. And while it's got very old wiring, we have preserved it with the idea that color is so dastardly. But I will venture to tell you this. In the history of the world, there has never been an article that said, Mary Jane Smith was found OD in her living room, a color projector blazing away.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it just has never happened. So the Spectrochrome system, each color has its own particular attributes. Now, Einstein won a Nobel Prize around the photoelectric effect, demonstrating that each color has a specific energy. And we know that vibrations cause different colors. So Dinshaw came up with this perfectly attuned 12-color system. Now, what do I mean by attuned? Well, we know we have a red spectrum, many red shades, orange, yellow, green, blue. He went, let's say, 10 degrees into the red, and then 10 degrees into the orange, 10 degrees into the yellow. So it was attuned perfectly by his system that all 12 colors integrated in a perfect attunement. Even though they were used one at a time, this is what he called his perfectly attuned color system. And in his book, actually written by his son, Let There Be Light, it talks about the attributes of each color. And it's interesting because many, many studies have been done by researchers at universities with things like this. They went into a manufacturing facility and painted the walls where the workers were working different colors. When the colors were kind of the red and the orange, the people in the work area were complaining of the heat. When they had colors like the blues and the turquoise in there, they complained they were too cold.
They were cold. Yeah.
James, the temperature never changed. The temperature was exactly the same. So physiologically, there are reactions to the body. And this spectrochrome system that we're sharing, and again, I'm going to say, I will never say it's the only system and you should only do this color. But again, the wide range that it allows you to address. Now, I personally, for demonstration purposes only, because I don't practice medicine, but just demonstrate, I have seen more than 300 humans, animals, and plants react to the system, including a dog with arthritis, and the human who was holding the dog under the light happened to have an arthritic elbow, and guess what? Magically, both were rectified. So we have a color system from a man who came from India, 500 U.S. doctors using it, hospitals were using it, and then the AMA came up with an article basically saying any doctor using color was going to lose their license. They didn't give a reason why. They certainly couldn't disprove the color, so it kind of went into obscurity. Dinshaw was put in jail several times, but a U.S. president commuted his sentence. So he wasn't that dastardly a person, but the color just didn't fit into the medical community.
Now, what's the power? What was the power source in that? Was like a light bulb, just a regular incandescent light bulb?
A regular incandescent. Now, this is amazing because inside here is, I didn't even know it existed, a 1,000 watt bulb. So it projected. But now, according to Einstein's finding, and there's various color filters here. If you put a light and it's a red filter, you can measure the speed of the particles on the other side. And for red, they would always be at the same speed. Now, if I have a blue sheet and the same light source, the speed of the particles is different. So each color has its unique aspects to it. And so this is another reason why the color is effective for different challenges in the body. So here's the other thing. If I had a 1,000 watt bulb, the speed of the red would be a certain speed. If I had a Christmas tree or a 1 watt bulb, the speed of the particle is exactly the same. So the particles coming off are not dependent on the strength of the light
power
source.
Of the light source, yeah.
And I think that's very telling. Why would one use more of a light? Now, obviously, these machines don't exist anymore. It's original cut glass from Germany. I mean, it's a solid, incredible device. So people have made other devices here. And I hope you can see, James, it's a regular incandescent bulb.
Mm-hmm.
And took 12 different filters, and you have a light therapy. It is so easy that people discount how effective it can be. This happens to be a 40-watt bulb. I put it on a tripod so it can reach different areas of the body. And these sheets, which are available from a company not affiliated with me, somebody can cut them to any size that they would like. I have hundreds of various therapies here. My materials, for those who weren't on our previous episodes, we have 52,000 items dating to 1075 AD in here. This is the premier color system in my mind for this reason. What it can do, and there are no adverse effects. The worst thing that happens is nothing happens. And I'd rather have that than some sort of other deleterious thing. So again, very, very easy. People can put these things together for a very low cost. And I don't know if you'll later maybe put a site where people can go, which again is not affiliated with me. I don't get kickbacks. It is a place that sells a light projector and slides that you can put into the projector, and that whole outfit is like $110.
What's the name of that site? I'll absolutely put it in the description.
Productsondemand.biz. Productsondemand.biz.
Got it.
And again, I don't know why they ended up carrying it. I've never met the principals. I just know that they do ship out the units. It actually gives you the entire colors there. Again, it's a Spectrochrome Dinshaw. And we're sharing it today because I think people need to know and not start with the most aggressive approach first. I've used this analogy, James. If a fly lands on this table, I could use a frigging wrecking ball. Maybe I'll get the fly, but I'm going to destroy the table.
Everything else. Yeah.
I can use a bat maybe, and if maybe I can get that, but I'm going to damage. Or I can use a fly swatter. For situations that are not really important, that you get immediate care, I would just recommend you start with the least intrusive first, because you have a place to go. You don't start with the wrecking ball, because that's it. If you miss that fly, you're done, the whole situation. So I like color as opposed to all the systems in here, because how easy is this? The book tells you what color to use for what specific health problem and why you're using it and where to put it on the body. And what's that old thing? Wipe on, wipe off.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Turn on, turn off. A therapy is in a completely darkened room for no less than 45 minutes. You don't need more than an hour. Now, how can you get hurt by it? Here's a glass. Now, if I fill this glass with water to the top, but I keep filling, I don't hurt the glass, but the water spills off the side. So the cell does not need any more than 1 hour. And that's why we say a maximum of an hour. You're just not going to be doing any more good
benefit. Yeah. Well, and so I have thoughts on this that are kind of relevant. So, of course, back in that time, I see why they would be so resistant to this, or it existing outside the establishment Western traditions. And, we have to stop this guy at all costs because he's going to put us out of business. Like that definitely all makes sense. And even more contemporarily, there's an individual whose name is Dr. Jack Kruse. Now, Dr. Jack Kruse has some extreme ideas, but one thing that he is a brain surgeon. And one thing he would do in all of his surgeries is utilize near infrared light to like prep the area he was going to operate on to be most receptive to healing once he was done doing his thing. So when he was doing this, I guess this would have been late 90s, early 2000s, he would have to kind of like do it very sneakily, because if the mainstream people heard about what or witnessed him doing that in the operating room, it would have blacklisted. Now, he ultimately gets blacklisted because he gets really frustrated with the fact that people aren't entertaining these ideas, and now his whole thing is kind of the benefits of UV light. But why do you think they go after Dinshaw so aggressively? Like, if this is a relatively low, I guess I'm answering my own question in the sense that this is cheap.
Well,
like we can go buy these components for a very cheap amount of
absolutely.
Money.
But there was another caveat which I didn't share, and that is Dinshaw said smoking causes cancer, meat is not good for the body, and dairy causes mucus and phlegm. So guess what?
Pissing off multiple industries.
He infuriated everybody was after him because of what he was saying. And again, we're very fortunate here in our holdings. We do have all of the cases of the 500 doctors and what they did and how they used it and what the results were. And again, color has been used. A laser light with AIDS. You're going to find these little articles buried in the medical journals for the exact same reason, James, that you just said, that somebody may hold, and I'm going to share at the very end of our discussion, the chairman of the Nobel Assembly gets blown out of the water. It doesn't matter what your credentials are, because people would say, oh, well, this doctor just is not that well known. That has nothing to do with it. It's if you are interrupting a particular situation and they are powerful, you're going to have A, resistance, and B, if the resistance is big or you're a threat, there's a problem. So I certainly don't want to turn our show into bashing anybody, but let's be honest here. The approach right now, the TV commercials are ludicrous.
Yeah.
I sit with my wife and listen for a skin problem. Tell your doctor if you got suicidal thoughts. Now, why do you think that happens? Why are there side effects? Why is there side effects for an aspirin, which should be so mild? Because the pharmaceutical is tracked or targeted for one problem, to rectify one situation. Unfortunately, it may blow out 3 other systems in the body.
Yeah.
Now, I don't deny that there are times you need immediate help, but to say that, as they say, I don't mean to be smiling like this, but when I hear these things are not good because they stop you from good medical care. Really? Doctor-caused and hospital-caused deaths is the number 3 or number 2 cause in the United States. So how is that or pharmaceutical better? I would opt that things be used openly if they're safe, but people need to be aware, like we're talking about this electromagnetic. The worst that happens with the color, and even Dinshaw said, then if the color's not working, it's the wrong diagnosed problem. Now, that's really believing in your system. So he said, you flip to the other side of the spectrum and the situation will be rectified. And it works for animals, It works for plants. It works for anything that is alive, because the electromagnetic spectrum is life.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting too, because the more we learn about science, the more we kind of get insights into the interconnectedness of, like, you know, how the abundant wave energy that we're surrounded by and its influence on us, both negative and positive. And when we look at a lot of the current health problems or just general decline in health of modern society, I can't help but think it's because we're probably bombarded with far too much bad electromagnetic energy,
Yes,
and not enough of the good. Like the thing that they say on the internet is you need to go touch grass.
Yes.
Right. And that's kind of like an insult. It's thrown around like an insult, but realistically, that's a plea for health, in my opinion. It's like we spend too much time in front of these screens or under lights that are literally causing damage or inhibiting the chemical processes in our body, and we're not spending enough time getting the good light, getting the good sources of energy. You know,
the early studies when the cell phones came out. Of course, I have my cell phone. They had an increase in brain cancers because the people were holding it right here, which is why I always use the speakerphone. So there's always a lot of things that are not reported, but I want to get to our next thing soon. But I just really, if you couldn't tell, I love the color. And I love the use of the color. But again, when we talk about specifics, I'm looking out my window. There's a golf course. There's all kinds of green trees. We realize there are many, many shades of these colors. Dinshaw just happened to find the optimum green, the optimum red, the optimum orange. And I'm just bringing this up. And experiments were done not by Dinshaw, but by scientists, where they went into a prison and they took the most hardened criminals and they painted the cell pink. And the person became so docile. They went into a weight room with the weightlifters, okay? And they put a pink card in front of his eyes. James couldn't lift the weight. But the greatest story is one of the colleges painted the football locker room for the visitors a pink color. And when they would come out for the second half, until somebody figured this out, they would come out like, yeah, okay.
And just get stomped on.
That took their energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. And again, it's like we're not saying don't go to a doctor, but if the entry option for what they're suggesting is hundreds of dollars and an intense medical procedure or drugs that are going to add 9 other problems that you're going to have to deal with, why not just start with light first, just to see, let me bombard myself with whatever spectrum, bandwidth of spectrum is supposed to help me here, and just see before we go to the next level, which would be intense medical procedure, drugs, or any of the other things that the standard system. And like, really, this used to be a conspiracy 50 years ago, maybe, but the medical association is compromised by the influence of the pharmaceutical companies. That should be a widely accepted thing now. People should see that. And to your point, the ads, my wife and I laugh about it too. It's like, this drug causes more problems than it's solving. Why am I taking this one thing to ease the stomach, my upset stomach, but it's going to also give me diarrhea? Isn't that the point of, I want to fix that? I don't want to make it worse. Well, I don't know.
I don't mean to be joking about it, but when I hear the drug that's used for people with psychological problems, and then the side effects are diarrhea and this and that, it's like, isn't this person suffering enough to begin with? Right. How is this?
Really now we're going to destroy their stomach? Yeah, geez, come on.
How is this really going to help them? So let's kind of segue.
Yeah, this will be a perfect segue.
Oh, you were going to talk about the LED. By the way, the LED lights, even by Dinshaw's son, Darius, who's in his 90s and still alive, the LED, it's just a different light source, and it is not the optimum for the color.
Well, and I think I've got his website pulled up. His son operates the Dinshaw Health Society, which is in Malaga, New Jersey, and he has a pretty good infographic up about the spectrums of light. So this was sunlight, full spectrum, captured on a bright New Jersey day. This is one type of bulb that's supposed to be full spectrum, but you see dropouts in red, orange, yellow bandwidth. And then this is another aught light, this is another light called an aught light that's supposed to be full spectrum, and it has the colors there, but it's not full spectrum because there's dropouts. And that's kind of what we're talking about.
And for our religious individuals or anybody, there's two admonitions. What's the first in the Bible? Let there be light.
Let there be light. Yeah,
and
of course.
What about? I'm thinking of the ark, the rainbow. Here's my covenant to you, the rainbow, and so it's part of who we are. And if you look at philosophically, which this is not that discussion, but all the philosophers said we are light, and
it's there too.
God is light. Light is within us. And we are a part and participle of that. So if we allow it to flow, we're going to be healthier, much healthier. So I'm doing a quick semi-set change here. So now we're going to talk about a device called a multi-wave oscillator. The multi-wave oscillator was developed by Georges Lakhovsky in the early 1900s. The reason I'm sharing it is because it is a very unique device. Lakhovsky determined that various cells are going to react to electromagnetic waves. And he determined that there was various frequencies, and there is a wonderful picture of him. There are particular frequencies that would enhance cellular structure back to a healthy state. Now, for those of you who joined James and I for Royal Rife, Rife's concept was to use frequencies that would destroy a particular virus or bacteria. Lakhovsky and his multi-wave oscillator, his theory was by presenting a healthy frequency to a cell, it would come back to its normal healthy state. So these multiple rings, which is why it's called a multi-wave oscillator, the various rings put out different frequencies. Each one of these frequencies is a healthy frequency for cells in different parts of the body. This was Lakhovsky's theory. Now, we could try an experiment where I turn this on, but I don't know what's going to happen to us. Do you want me to try it?
Why not? Yeah, I mean, we might as well.
But see, you're safe. Where are you? At 3,000 miles away?
I hope I hear it, yeah.
So it's probably, you can't see the sparks, but it's sparking now. We're going to find out whether this will show, but I'm wondering if you can see the light bulb lighting, or maybe it's...
Can't see it lighting up, but it might be because it's too bright in there.
So the idea is this is an unplugged light bulb, and the frequencies are obviously coming off the various rings. So Lakhovsky, again, he primarily started addressing a cancer situation, but then noted that his multi-wave oscillator, which contains a Tesla coil inside, was able to address numerous health challenges. Now, the original Lakhovsky machine was a double antenna, and an individual would sit between the two antennas during a therapy session. So for the purists out there that are aware, there you go. So a chair would be put between them, and the individual would have these waves basically dancing through their body. So the purists, I want them to know, yes, I'm very aware of that. My device, which I've had for 40 years, is a single antenna, but lo and behold, it has worked just as well when I have demonstrated with people who have had cancer, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's disease, and many others. And yes, I know exactly the names I threw out, the technical health problems. It has worked for a variety because, again, the idea is like this. You have two cells next to each other, and they're vibrating perfectly healthy the way they should. And then all of a sudden, one of them starts wobbling. It goes out of its vibration. And the cell next to it goes, oh, maybe I'm supposed to do that. And then they're both wobbling. And we have something going from cell to cell, okay? And if it's a virus or a bacteria, that message has come to cells that were not at their healthiest state, and it goes cell to cell to cell. So Lakhovsky, and I am making this very simple, Lakhovsky figured, well, what if we put back into these cells and remind them what is their healthy frequency? And then they go, oh, I'm supposed to be listening to this and not my buddy over here. And that is the theory in a super, super little way. Each one of these and the problems he addressed are mind-boggling. Frequency. What determines death? Brain waves and heartbeat. Frequency. Everything is frequency. Our good friend Tesla managed to remind everybody it's all frequency. And so the multi-wave oscillator generates how he figured it out, the exact frequencies, and he did this in the 30s. Now, when the Germans invaded France, Lakhovsky migrated to the United States and had his device at the Bellevue Hospital and literally cleared out
in New York.
Yes, and cleared out the hospital. Soon after that, he got killed in the crosswalk leading to the hospital and died. He was run over by a car as he was entering one day into the hospital, and the multi-wave oscillator generally disappeared from sight. Now, it's very, very interesting because there are various medical journals in Europe where they used it. It's a very simple device. The picture you showed was big standing. My multiple wave fits in a briefcase, a very simple briefcase. And again, there's various attachments. I don't sell these, nor is it available. And if someone contacts me, I can't help you. I don't build them. But my particular device, you plug it in, it puts out a little bit of ozone, and then the frequency goes through the bulb to any specific area. You know, we could say, since I'm stimulating people but not selling it, my point is just to get people aware that these things exist and that they were used. And when I traveled through Europe, physicists that I know, every one of them had a multi-wave oscillator. In Germany, in Italy, in France, they all knew about this device. Now, how expensive is this? How much is AC current out of the wall? It's very, very inexpensive. It is working with frequency. Now, the color, the multiple-wave oscillator, here's the deal, like places like on Wikipedia. Well, there's no scientific testing of it. Well, if nobody tests something, then it's never tested. And then you can turn around and say, it's never been tested. Because I will absolutely guarantee you that my devices, head-to-head, like a Pepsi challenge, would work much better than anything that's used in the pharmaceutical side. It will rectify. This will go through casts. And I met an individual with a torn Achilles tendon, and frequency goes right through the casts. Now, the difference between the color has to end up on bare skin. It doesn't go
to
through
be
clothes.
absorbed. Yeah.
This goes right through. And it has worked for the various things: gangrene, Parkinson's, MS, cancer tumors. Now, I don't know how much time, but I'm going to kind of segue something else in conjunction with this. Bjorn Nordstrom, chairman of the Nobel Assembly, 1986, Discover Magazine, The Electric Man. Nordstrom discovered needle biopsy, discovered that electricity was the circuit on and off leading to all activities in the human body. Yep, there he is. And this is his book, Biologically Closed Electric Circuits, which when I flew him from Sweden into the U.S., he autographed for us because he shrank cancer tumors using electricity with 0 side effects. Now, you would think this would be so important. So I fly him out in 1986, World Research Foundation, and the LA Times calls him an alternative medical practitioner because he's working with electricity. This is the chairman of the Nobel Assembly, discoverer of needle biopsy. Now, it just so happened the news program 2020, which was big in the 80s, happened to come out, heard about, we had Nordstrom, and interviewed him. 2 years later, incredibly, at our Second World Congress, the night we had it, the 2020 program came out, and I'm going to paraphrase. What do you think, doctors, about Nordstrom? And his like, we don't have time to learn anything new. It's electricity. We're not taught about electricity. Well, what about the results? So Nordstrom gets a bad rap here, and he goes over to the People's Republic of China in the 80s, and he gives his patent to the Chinese government, and 5,000 MDs treated 13,000 patients with an 80% effective cure rate with no side effects. He ends up winning the highest award the country gives to a non-Chinese citizen. If you try to use in the United States, his therapy, you're only allowed if you have already done chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery.
At that point, what does it even matter? You've already been wrecked by all of those.
There's nothing left.
Yeah.
Your system is whacked out. So I try to put this together to tell you it doesn't make any difference a doctor's credentials. So people should never assume, and I think your audience is savvy, just like you, James, that you're going to get blown out if you're interrupting some of their mainstream technique therapy or some expert, because they never will go head to head. You like it in sports, but we don't seem to do it in medicine or some other areas where we would see whether something works or not. And I'm going to mention it again, the worst source in this world is Wicca Wikipedia. They are biased against every electromagnetic technique. Royal Rife purportedly did a microscope, but nobody knew what they were looking at. Color is, they say it might work. They conveniently leave out. I contacted Wikipedia. I have original Royal Rife material. I would like to put it, I'm sorry, we don't allow people to make changes. I have the original materials. So take what you see with a grain of salt. And because somebody says there's no scientific basis, that may not be true. What they're really saying is, well, we haven't tested it yet. Well, will you ever test it? No. Why would we test it? It's credible loop that medicine is in, that it just will not allow some of these things to take place. Is there a lot of data? Absolutely. I would rather take 500 doctors who are successful and say, guess what? It worked, rather than someone saying, we want a controlled condition. We want an absolute controlled condition where this is like this and this. You know what? There is no such thing, because
Right.
every physical body is different.
Is a little different. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say. And I think that most people are kind of completely unaware. Even the regulatory bodies that would do the testing, that in itself kind of is a scam. And there's a pretty heavy plenty of people have done way better investigations on it, but it costs a lot of money just to get a clinical trial. And then you might give that clinical trial, say, here's my system, here's how it works, here's how you have to use it. The people doing the clinical trial might not even follow that order. And then, of course, they don't do it right and it doesn't work. And then they say, well, we can't approve this because it doesn't work.
Exactly.
It's kind of limited in a way to where you have to have infinite money, and you have to, so the pharmaceutical industry can push all of this unsafe stuff and get it through the clinical testing to get it approved. They've got unlimited funds and resources to finagle that system. But somebody who's trying to develop an alternative practice, they're already up against significant resistance just to get in the door to have a conversation had about it. And especially, this is a little tangential, but I swear I have a point, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So, Lakhovsky, was there any overlap in time with Tesla? And did those people, were they aware of each other, or were they were aware of each other? Okay, so I don't find that to be a coincidence. I find like that period of time, there were a handful of people that were absolutely aware of the electromagnetic nature of our reality well before the science was going to catch up.
Yes.
And they were pushing the boundaries. Now, my personal opinion, and this is because of a long series of research that I've done into these topics, the reason that most of the electromagnetic methods of health, maintenance, and support, the reason they have been vilified publicly is because the military was doing something with them. Okay, and again, this is just my opinion. So when I look at especially the new age of warfare techniques and tactics that the military has, a lot of them are electronic warfare, and some of that is antenna arrays that bombard people with certain spectrums and amplitudes of electromagnetic energy for negative responses. The most prominent one that is known, anyone can look this up on the internet, it's called an ADS. It's an active denial system, but it's a microwave system that they use for crowd dispersal that will make your skin feel like it's burning. And they have them on top of Humvees or on top of tanks, and just to get to the real meat of that, it can kill you. Like they developed it to be a weapon, and they're just using basic electromagnetic energy to have a negative impact on you. And especially when we get into people like Tesla and to a lesser extent what Lakhovsky was doing, because I don't know what connections he had with the government, but Tesla was developing stuff for the U.S. military.
Yes.
There's like a very fun thread. I've been to the hotel that Tesla died in, the New Yorker. It's right next to Madison Square Garden. You can go see his room. But when he died, Fred Trump, the current president's uncle, went and collected all of his trunks. And the thread there was that a lot of people said Tesla died in obscurity, a poor man. But the thread is that he wasn't poor and he wasn't in obscurity. He was at the New Yorker working on stuff for the military.
Yes.
At the time he was there, the New Yorker had the largest electric generator in the world in the basement of the hotel, which was well more than enough electricity for the hotel. So he was probably there doing research in secret. And when he died, the government came and collected what they paid for. And when we look at, again, like the general level of disease that we have and how we're being just bombarded by electromagnetic energy, not to say all of it's nefarious, but I can't help but think that when my generation gets older, a problem that we're going to have is cancers related to cell phones, cancers related to Wi-Fi, all of the electromagnetic energy that we're just completely, never before in human history have we been bombarded like the way that we are. We're going to have a ton of health issues on top of the damage that the blue lights do to our eyes, and then the damage that goes on chemically beyond just like the physical damage to our eyes and the chemical processes in our brains. Again, not to say it's all nefarious, but when I look at why these people in the early 1900s were able to come up with a lot of this very cutting edge stuff, I can't help but think the reason it gets vilified publicly is because the military didn't want people to know about it because they were making weapons with it, or they were making some new type of technology that they wanted to keep secret. And anyone that got anywhere close to talking about manipulating reality with electromagnetism, they had to be squashed. And if they didn't play with us, then they had to be destroyed. You know, so
yeah, I mean, it is definitely the hotbed of research was in those early 1900s. We have Harold Saxon Burr at Yale. We had George Kreil at the Cleveland Clinic, all validating everything we're sharing here with the cancer. But the reason it didn't go out is it's like a perfect storm. Your point is very well taken. It could be. Add to it the pharmaceutical first going, and you had the perfect storm. You had this group who's in charge of the government going, all right, we'll go along with you. Let's just shut all this down. Let's take Dinshaw to jail. And it was just very prevalent. But you had the greatest researchers all validating each other's work, even though they were coming from different angles. So the electromagnetic spectrum is health, is life for us, for animals, for plants. And the question is, you know, even with your audience, what are you going to do about it now? I wrote a book and nothing happened, but you can make it happen. And the thing is, you either do it yourself, if you can't, for somebody that is not going to put your lights out 24 hours from now. We have not said that one time. You do what you need to do, but you don't get tricked and fooled and scared, basically. You got to do this right away. And then right before surgery, you start looking, these are all the things that can go wrong. I will bet there's not one person in your audience that has not read that right before and go, oh my God. But
that's a lot of bad stuff. Yeah.
I have to do this now. All right. We got a great medical system for diagnosis. Therapeutically, not so good.
Yeah.
It just isn't. So take these different techniques. And I always like to finish with this, basically, my story about Aristotle, so people know where we come from. Aristotle was walking along the Mediterranean. He sees a man in the distance holding a bucket, putting it in the Mediterranean, pouring it in a hole. When he finally gets up to the man, he realizes it's the village madman. And he says, what are you doing? And the man says, I'm going to empty all of that water so I can see that beautiful blue-green bottom. So Aristotle says, well, how are you going to get all of that water into that little hole? And the man looked at him and scratched his head and said, great philosopher, what are you doing? And Aristotle says, I am contemplating the universe. And the man walks over and says, now, how are you going to get all of that into that little head of yours? Everything is perspective. And in listening to our conversation, maybe we're Aristotle, maybe we're the madmen, but it behooves somebody to check a little further. My main site, lesscomplicated.net, I not only have some of these books, but I have 40 deep dives. And in the deep dive, you can go to the multi-wave oscillator, you can go to Dinshaw and listen to a 15, 18-minute presentation about what we shared here. And I like it. Yeah, it's under audio deep dive. And it's all these different
Treasure trove.
aspects, philosophical, vibrations, gemstones, and learn a little bit more, probably in a much better, more succinct way than I have. But I hope we've brought something new to your audience, James. And I always love when you and I get together. Your openness, your willingness to share, I really appreciate it.
Well, Steve, I have to thank you for the same, for coming on here. And again, like, you're not only your personal knowledge, but the tangible collection of stuff that you've acquired. You're literally the steward of a lot of this stuff. You're not going to find it anywhere else. So I always appreciate you opening your doors and showing this, showing us what you have and showing us what you've learned. And, you know, I think you did say something that was really important. I think it also might be worth mentioning here. There are ways beyond the methods that we've talked about, which are all very low cost, easy entry. Anyone can do it. It could supplement whatever type of therapy you're trying to do very simply. You could easily fold it into your daily schedule. There's also the simple things, like you said, speakerphone. Don't hold the phone close to your head. Personally, I've started, when I go to sleep, I turn off my Wi-Fi, I turn off Bluetooth, I turn off my cell phone reception, completely turn off the phone from being connected in that way, and I put it a few feet away from my body.
Beautiful.
You know, so many of us are in bed until 1 a.m. scrolling, you know, like, there are simple ways that are free that anyone can do to limit your exposure. I don't think you or I are suggesting that anyone cut themselves off from the internet. I don't think you or I are suggesting that anyone try and completely shield themselves from the electromagnetic energy that we're surrounded by. But there are very simple ways that you can limit your exposure.
Yes.
And you know, a little bit of that over a long period of time makes a big difference. I've noticed I can sleep just a little bit better. I wake up a little bit better. I also took your and Ronnie Pontiac's advice and started keeping a dream journal. My dreams have just gotten exceptional. They've gotten so much more detailed and so much more interesting. Not to say there's a connection there. Maybe there is, but those two things are kind of unrelated. But these are simple things that anyone can do, and any one of them are more preferable than a million side effects from a drug, or, you know, the terrible rushing into a surgery that you really might not need at that exact moment. Obviously, always consult with your healthcare professionals, but, you know, not all of those people. Yeah, do your due diligence, and not all of those people are necessarily geared toward, you know, there is a profit system that's built into our medical system here, and, you know, it is important to be aware of that. But, all right, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed today's presentation. Steve, we'll have to figure out another topic to do. Yeah, we'll have to
do it again.
Figure out another topic to do a deep dive on. You've literally got a whole library full of things we could pick apart, but I just want to thank you again, and for everyone listening, thank you for joining in. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.